WWE presents Night of Champions this Saturday, June 28th from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, featuring, of course, the finals of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament, as well as several high-profile championship spectacular matches. However, could we see some major creative surprises from Paul Triple H Levesque and his creative team? That includes the debut of several high-profile WWE superstars. We'll let you know in today's countdown video 5 names that could be set to make their possible WWE debuts on the main roster this Saturday in Riyadh. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. And as I mentioned in the intro, this Saturday, it will be WWE Night of Champions, Saturday, June 28th, 2025, from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in the Kingdom Arena. We'll see the finals of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. We'll also see the WWE Championship on the line as John Cena resumes his rivalry with CM Punk in the main event. But could we also be set to see some big surprises from Triple H in the form of several WWE debuts from stars maybe coming up from NXT or stars we've never even seen before on WWE television? We'll get into that shortly, but you can see right here, we are less than 300 subscribers to go until 23,000. Our goal for this year is to get to 25k in 2025. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, join the ever-expanding WNU. In addition, you can become a member of the WN365 roster, links in the video description below. And when it comes to the sidebar, you can see all upcoming live streams we've got here on the channel. That includes this Saturday for WWE Night of Champions. We'll have a watch-along and a post-show. In addition, upcoming watch-alongs and post-shows, live streams include the likes of AEW All in Texas, Saturday night's main event featuring Gunther versus Goldberg, and the return of WWE Evolution. All the details, as always, are in the sidebar. Right, let's get into today's countdown video and talk about possible debuts we could see at Night of Champions this Saturday in Riyadh, beginning with Ethan Paige. Now, there have been rumors and rumblings recently that the former AEW star, the former NXT champion, and the current NXT North American champion could be on his way to the main roster. Now, one report indicated, it came from bodyslam.net, that Ethan Paige was a name that was brought up when WWE were holding talks and having discussions about new names that could be set to join the faction led by Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. Of course, already in that group, we've got Big Bronson Reed, we've got Bron Breakker, but we could have Ethan Paige. Now, as of right now, at the time of recording this video, no one from that faction is scheduled for Night of Champions, but there is going to be a SmackDown the night before in Riyadh, so certainly anything's possible and more matches could be added to the card. In addition to that, of course, it is Night of Champions, and we don't really know how hard and fast WWE are sticking to the previous theme. Previously, it was all championships are going to be defended. This time, not so much. We've got a street fight between Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez with no titles being on the line. So certainly anything can get added. Maybe there's a situation where Seth Rollins has to defend his Money in the Bank briefcase in this tournament, or in this pay-per-view rather. So we'll have to wait and see, certainly. But Ethan Paige, he could get involved there. He could get involved. We could see him appear on the show. He is currently a champion as well in WWE NXT, that being the North American champion. So who's to say, at the time of recording this video, this week's episode of NXT hasn't come out, who's to say that NXT won't have some representation on the Night of Champions card? We could see an NXT championship be defended. But what we do know for sure is that there have been serious discussions about bringing Ethan Paige to the main roster. And typically when it comes to these big Saudi shows or these big Saudi weekends, WWE does like to sometimes have a main roster call-up, and that could be one in the form of Ethan Paige. Now, many people weren't actually sure if Paige was going to be called up to the main roster when he signed with WWE. Of course, he's 35 years old. He's not really an up-and-coming talent. He's been around for a long time, whether it's in Impact Wrestling, whether it's in AEW, whether prior to that just being on the Indies. Ethan Paige is well known, but he's had a really successful run, probably a more successful run than people envisaged him having in NXT, winning the NXT Championship in the shortest amount of time of anyone that's ever debuted on that brand, and now also winning the NXT North American Championship, ironically from a fellow former AEW star, which we'll talk about in a bit. So Ethan Paige, could we see him arrive on the WWE main roster as quickly as this Saturday at Night of Champions? Maybe he defends his championship, who knows? Now, what about Obafemi? Speaking of champions, what about the NXT champion Obafemi? There are select people, aren't there, in NXT that are just ready for the main roster. And one of them is Obafemi. This guy has been ready for the longest time. He has been absolutely dominant as the NXT champion. And you do ask, what's there really left for Adawahi to do in NXT, right? He was certainly, the most dominant NXT North American champion of all time. He's only won it once, but he was the longest reigning NXT North American champion in the history of that championship. He's the current NXT champion, and he's held that championship for, again, quite some time at this point. He entered the Iron Survivor Challenge and won that match. Then he faced Trick Williams right at the beginning of this year. And Trick Williams and Eddie Thorpe, rather, right at the beginning of this year. He's held the championship ever since. So he's already 6 months in to this championship reign. And you look across at the NXT roster, and you're sort of going, I don't know. I don't know which person could defeat Adawahi for the title. What else is there really left to do? So as I mentioned, when it comes to Ethan Page, there's certainly the possibility when we talk about Night of Champions and defending championships, nobody has stated explicitly that NXT championships aren't going to be defended on the show. It's very unlikely, you feel like, but today, at the time of recording this video, it's Tuesday, NXT hasn't aired. We could see a situation where Adawahi defends his NXT championship. What an opportunity that would be for NXT. Or we could just see a situation where he's called up to the main roster and he gets involved. I mean, there are matches that could be ripe for interference, whether it be the King of the Ring tournament fighter, whether it be John Cena's undisputed WWE Championship match against CM Punk. We've seen him involve plenty of nefarious means to retain his championship so far in this Never Seen 17 undisputed WWE Championship title reign. Solo Sikoa might need assistance in challenging Jacob Fatu for the US Championship. Maybe he is, seduced by someone like Karrion Kross for his match against Sami Zayn. There are certainly possibilities where you could see the current NXT champion get involved and appear at the upcoming Saudi PLE. Now, what about Hiko? Hiko has been signed with WWE for actually a really long time. Hiko signed with WWE around the time that his brothers Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa signed with WWE. He's been under contract with WWE since July of 2024, close to one full calendar year. Now, he's been training at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida ever since. After almost 1 year of training, and look, there was an assumption at one point that he was going to be arriving on NXT. There were several reports stating that he wasn't set for the main roster. He was going to be appearing on NXT, and he wasn't going to be a part of the Bloodline storyline with Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu and the former Gorillas of Destiny and Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. Nope, he was going to be on NXT. That's what was going to happen. And we just never saw him. We just never saw the former New Japan Strong Openweight Champion or former IWGP Tag Team Champion appear on NXT. So much so that there was natural concern about, is he doing something wrong? Is he not, adjusting to the WWE style? Is he rubbing people the wrong way? Just why haven't we seen Hiko? Because he was prominently featured on New Japan television. He's made appearances for TNA Wrestling. He's made appearances in All Elite Wrestling. Why is it not working out in WWE? Well, in the last few weeks, he started to make dark match appearances before episodes of SmackDown. After almost 1 year of being under contract with WWE, he made his debut before the June 13th, 2025 episode of SmackDown. He defeated Kit Wilson in a dark match. Just last week, on the June 20th episode of SmackDown, before that went on the air, he had another dark match, this time against a local competitor. So whether that's WWE just trying to get a look at him, whether that's WWE strategically putting him out there so people are going to talk about him on social media, I don't really know what the plan is. One thing's for certain, you feel like if there was a time for him to debut on the main roster, it might be exactly right now. Why? Because Solo Sikoa is challenging for the United States Championship, and the championship is held by Jacob Fatu, and we know, of course, how much WWE highly rates the Samoan Werewolf. So if Jacob Fatu was to drop the United States Championship to Solo Sikoa, you'd think there'd be a complete myriad of interference, and maybe so much so that it would have returns. Maybe, obviously, we know that JC Mateo is going to be ringside for Solo Sikoa, and he might get involved. But you could see a situation where Tama Tonga gets involved, he returns and gets involved. Tonga Loa, he returns and gets involved. But even that isn't enough to put the United States champion down, and they realize what we need to do is get our brother, the biggest son of Haku, and bring him in. And maybe that's a situation. Maybe there's a situation where he's the person to neutralize Jacob Fatu and actually give the United States Championship to Solo Sikoa. So maybe his appearances prior to SmackDown, these dark matches, are a sign that he is destined for a main roster debut very, very shortly, and he links up with the Bloodline. If not Tim, perhaps Lance Adawahi is the person. Now, this one feels much more unlikely than Hiko, it must be said. Now, it had been reported that Lance Adawahi had signed with WWE. Adawahi actually signed with WWE around a similar time in the summer of 2024, and he had been assigned to the NXT brand. He's yet to debut, reportedly due to injury, and the suggestion was that WWE knew that he was injured when he came through. There were also reports suggesting that maybe his training wasn't what WWE was expecting it to be. Of course, he does have experience in the likes of Major League Wrestling and in pro wrestling. Noah, in Major League Wrestling, he was a member of the Samoan SWAT team. He had the MLW World Tag Team Championship. He was involved certainly in that, and he was aligned with Jacob Fatu. So there could be a situation where maybe in the future, let's say if Hikuleu does make his WWE debut at Night of Champions, maybe Jacob Fatu needs some backup in the future in the form of Lance Adawahi, because he's got a history of him. The reason it's unlikely, as I said, he is still recovering from an injury, and the injury was said to keep him out of action for well into this year. We don't really know what the injury is, the severity of it either. In addition to that, in January of this year, Adawahi was on the list of WWE ID talents and suggested that he'd be a part of the WWE Evolve roster. So WWE might have a lot more plans when it comes to his development. If they're saying that he's not even WWE NXT or NXT level up ready, and he's only ready for WWE Evolve at this point, that would suggest that he's very, very, very far away from the WWE main roster, wouldn't it? So this one does feel less likely, but I suppose anything's possible, and it's really interesting to think where the Bloodline storyline is going at this point. The Bloodline storyline doesn't involve Roman Reigns anymore. It doesn't involve Jey Uso. It doesn't really involve Jimmy Uso. It only involves Solo Sikoa, and it's kind of directionless, and it kind of feels wrong to even kind of suggest that it's the Bloodline anymore, because it's something completely different. So would Lance Adawahi be involved in that, or does WWE really just want to wrap up this storyline and just sort of finish it off and go in another direction? I suppose time will tell. But Adawahi, he could be involved and he could make his main roster debut. At this point, when it comes to the Bloodline, nothing is off limits when it comes to family members debuting on television. So I guess anything is possible. And finally, Ricky Saints. In the same way we spoke about Ethan Paige at the beginning of this video, that he could be on his way to the WWE main roster, we know that Ricky Saints, the former Ricky Starks, certainly is on his way to the main roster in WWE. When Ricky Starks signed with WWE earlier this year, it was reported that he had signed a main roster deal. He would be starting in NXT, but like a lot of talents that come in from the likes of AEW or maybe TNA Wrestling, yes, they sign and they start on NXT, but they're on main roster money. And he's already had a very successful run in NXT, winning the NXT North American Championship. He competed over WrestleMania weekend, defeating Ethan Page. Eventually, he did drop the title to Ethan Page on the May 27th episode of NXT. And actually, people expected at that time that this was a sign that he was on his way up to the main roster and he was just going to have this abridged run in NXT, but he was going to be used on Raw or SmackDown. Now, it looks like he's still competing on NXT, and they had an injury angle, and maybe at some point he's going to win the North American Championship back, but there have been these reports suggesting that in the same way that Ethan Page has been considered for the Seth Rollins faction with Paul Heyman, Bron Breakker, and Big Bronson Reed, that Ricky Saints has also been considered for it too. So the same theory goes with the theory that we laid out there earlier on regarding Ethan Page. If we see an appearance from Seth Rollins, if we see an appearance possibly, in the main event involving John Cena and CM Punk, we know the history that CM Punk has with Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins, and that situation was never really resolved. They confronted each other recently at Fanatics Fest. If Seth Rollins decides to get involved in that match, maybe it's a situation where it looks like he's going to cash in. It looks like he's going to cash in on Cena, or he's going to make it a triple threat match, or what have you. But no, that doesn't happen. He actually just screws over CM Punk, and it allows Ricky Saints to hit Punk from behind. Of course, someone that CM Punk's got a big history with. CM Punk was a big, big advocate of Ricky Starks during his AEW days when CM Punk was a producer for AEW Collision. And he had a significant role behind the scenes, and it was really CM Punk's show. He chose who could actually be allowed in the building or wasn't allowed in the building. He was a big proponent of Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks defeated him in the finals of the Men's Owen Hart Foundation Cup tournament in 2023. So it would make a lot of sense that Ricky Saints would debut costing CM Punk the undisputed WWE Championship and aligning with his most fierce rival in WWE, that being Seth Rollins. That would kind of be poetic, and it would also allow Punk to continue not only working with Seth Rollins, possibly lead it to a SummerSlam match, but also work with Ricky Saints, someone he's a big fan of and has worked with in the past as well. So I think Ricky Saints possibly debuting at Night of Champions, screwing over CM Punk and allowing John Cena to retain, but actually aligning himself with Seth Rollins, to me, that does make perfect sense. We'll have to wait and see if indeed that does happen. So there you go, guys. There are 5 WWE superstars that could be set to make their WWE main roster debut this weekend at WWE Night of Champions in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. A reminder, once again, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. We are less than 300 subscribers away from 23,000 subscribers on that road to 25k. The aim, of course, is to get to 25k in 2025. In addition, you can join the WN365 roster. Links in the video description below, or you can click the join button. You get your badges, your emojis, and your exclusive members-only content. And also, be sure to check out the sidebar. You can see all upcoming live streams we've got here on the channel. That includes watch-alongs for upcoming events such as Night of Champions this Saturday, AEW All in Texas, Saturday night's main event featuring Goldberg's retirement match, and WWE Evolution. And for all of those shows, we'll also have live post shows once the show has finished too. I appreciate everyone for tuning in as always, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.